On June 12, 1970, Doc Ellis decided to take a trip of the psychedelic variety with his friends the same day he had to pitch for the Pittsburgh Pirates, but still somehow managed to throw a no-hitter in a 2-0 win against the Padres. On August 19, 1951, the St. Louis Browns decided to let 3'7" Eddie Gaedel make a plate appearance, and he walked on 4 pitches while also sporting the jersey number 1/8, because he's like short. Morris Berg, a middling batter in the 1930s who hit .243 for his career, retired in 1934, and in 1944 he was put in charge by the CIA to assassinate German physicist Werner Heisenberg if he had felt Heisenberg was close to creating an atomic bomb. That's quite the career change. These are just a few crazy stories from MLB's history, but in this video, I'm going to go over a few more of my favorites. As always, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Ernie Shore's name may not be the first to come to mind when discussing the most remarkable moments in MLB history, but he holds one of the craziest records that no one else can touch. On May 6, 1917, Shore started a game as a relief pitcher and was thrust into quite a unique situation. When the starting pitcher, Babe Ruth, gave up a walk in the first inning, he was ejected from the game for arguing over balls and strikes, and he also punched the umpire in the face that might have led to it as well. As a result, Shore took his place and threw a complete game shutout for the Red Sox against the Washington Senators, retiring the next 26 batters he faced. Fred Merkle, a rookie teenager playing for the 1908 New York Giants at the time, was on first base in a pivotal September game against the Chicago Cubs in a 1-1 game in the bottom of the ninth. Al Bridwell knocked in a single that appeared to lead to the winning run on third scoring, but Merkle never successfully advanced to second base, meaning the winning run never counted. Merkle was pleading with umpires that the ball used to get him out at second base was not the actual game ball, but Cubs second baseman Johnny Everett made such a good case against him that the umpires overturned the ruling of the game itself. Fans had already stormed the field, and the umpires couldn't control them, so they instead decided to call the game an official tie. Since it was a tie, the season ended with the Giants and the Cubs also tying for first place in their division, which led to a makeup game where the Cubs would win the pennant, and ultimately win the World Series. Ray Caldwell had such a penchant for over-drinking that the Cleveland Indians manager Tris Speaker put a clause in his contract that allowed for Ray to drink after games that he pitches, believing it was crucial to allow Caldwell a day to let loose as to avoid any shenanigans on any other days. Ray Caldwell, once seen as a promising prospect throwing sub-2 ERA seasons with the Highlanders and Red Sox, was now delegated to nothing more than a wannabe has-been who can't stay sober for more than 5 hours. However, this did not stop Ray from throwing the best pitching performance of his life on August 24, 1919, the first start of his career for Cleveland. Through 8 2/3 innings, Caldwell had only given up a run on 4 hits and 2 walks and was 1 out away from a complete game, but then a tremendous lightning bolt, I said lightning bolt, hit the field and struck Caldwell directly in his chest. Tris Speaker came to the field to help Caldwell off, but he brushed himself off and got the final batter to ground out to third base, thus completing the most savage complete game in MLB history. On July 15, 1994, the Cleveland Indians faced off against the Chicago White Sox in a game that would lead to criminal trespassing, ceiling damage, and utter hilarity, honestly. Albert Belle, the only player in history to hit 50 home runs and 50 doubles in a single season, was the Indians' star player, but White Sox manager Gene Lamont was tipped off pregame that Belle might be using a corked bat. So umpire Dave Phillips confiscated the bat and put it in the umpire's dressing room. The Indians knew they were about to get cooked, because, it was a corked bat, so they sent reliever Jacob Grimsley through the ceiling vents to go retrieve the bat, which he did. The placement bat was super obvious that it was not Belle's, and ultimately Belle was given a 7-game suspension for it, even though just 3 months later, the entire MLB would be suspended as they went on a strike. LOL. It's quite good timing there. Fritz Peterson should be known for having the lowest walk percentage for any left-handed pitcher in the live ball era. However, instead he is really known for switching families with his fellow Yankee teammate Mike Kekich. There isn't much to this story. In 1970, Fritz had a thing for Mrs. Kekich, and Mike had a thing for Mrs. Peterson, so they just straight up swapped wives. Fritz got traded to Cleveland in 1973, and his marriage with Mrs. Kekich is still ongoing to this day, while, Mike broke up with Mrs. Peterson shortly after. The ultimate cuck. An average baseball watcher might not know who Rube Waddell is, so let me give you the quick Spark Notes. Rube was firstly born on Friday the 13th of 1876. As a toddler, he ran away from his house and stayed at the local firehouse for 3 days. Opposing teams knew he had a short attention span, so they would bring dogs and shiny objects to distract them, which they did as he took normal breaks mid-game to go pet some puppies. In the off-season, Rube would wrestle alligators at the local circus, and he also performed in multiple stage plays. In 1905, Rube won the pitching Triple Crown and set a still-standing record for the most strikeouts by a lefty in the American League, but he was unable to pitch in the World Series that year after he hurt his pitching arm fighting a teammate over what? Over a straw hat. A hat made of straw. Yeah. To end this list, let's talk about the first ever American hijacking of a plane, taking place in 1935 and orchestrated by none other than professional big leaguer Len Koenecke. Len was a promising hitter for the Dodgers, as in 1934 he hit .320 to go along with 14 home runs in his first season with the club. However, his stats would decline in 1935 as his drinking became a bigger issue, which would thrust Len into a bench role, which would lead to Len grounding out in a pivotal 9th inning at bat, which would lead to the Dodgers releasing Len the next day. After being released, Len's first order of business was to board an American Airlines flight belligerently drunk and was so obnoxious that the pilot was forced to chain him to his seat. This is not the hijacking, however. Len, now that he's in Detroit, wanted to revive his career one last time by attempting to go to Buffalo to meet with the Bisons, but he boarded a flight to Toronto to do this. Len's idea was to change the trajectory of the plane to Buffalo mid-flight, but the pilots simply were just not having any of it, and they walloped him in the head with a fire extinguisher, killing him in the process. Rest in peace to the legend Len Koenecke. And I hope you enjoyed this video, ya utter savage.